Now, hello, welcome along to this week's edition of the Clare Champion Sports Chat podcast. We're back from our hiatus last week. You can see a lovely tan on Peter. He spent a week in the sun down around Clonmary McMahon. I don't know where he found it for the week, but it was there anyway. Fergie's looking nice and fresh as well. Mixed bag on the podcast this week, but I suppose it's unfortunate we have to start off obviously with the sad news, Peter, that broke early this morning of the untimely passing of the Clare Ladies Football chairman, Kieran Harvey. A number of us would obviously have known Kieran through a lot of his roles, not just in the GA but also in community games. He was also hugely involved in the IFA back in West Clare, and the first thing to do is to send our condolences to Mary and to all the extended Harvey family as well on Kieran's sad loss. Peter, I suppose it had been known for a while that Kieran hadn't been in the best of health, but certainly going by the tributes flowing to him today, I mean, a real indicator of the esteem that this man was held in.
Yeah, he was held in the highest of esteem. He was, he was a fantastic family man, first and foremost. He was just the ultimate family man. Also a great community man, and you could see that via his involvement in several sporting organisations. Personally, I'd have come across him a good bit through the ladies' football and that. But he was very involved in athletics as well, community games and farming organisations too. And probably, I think it was the last time I rang him a few months ago there. I rang him, it was around, I should have kind of realised it was around milking time, which wasn't the best time. And it was work related, like it was in relation to live streaming the ladies' county finals and that. But when I rang Kieran anyway, he'd always answer, and he did answer, but there was an awful lot of bellowing going on in the background. And but he didn't, like a lot of other people might say, oh, I can't talk to you at the moment. And I was saying to Kieran, I said, look, I'll ring you back maybe some other stage. But he insisted that whatever I was ringing him about, that we spoke about it, And I suppose it was just a small example of that his phone was never off, and his commitment to whatever organisation he was involved in was complete. He really did everything he could, and he did just a great capacity for leading. And he's a massive loss, obviously to his family, most importantly, but huge loss to his community, to the community back in Querdon and the, I suppose, broader peninsula parishes. And also to those various organisations he was involved in. Yeah, not just did he serve as Clare Ladies chairman in the last couple of years, but he was managing and being a trainer of that minor B team that won an Ireland title a couple of years ago. He was involved up along with several development squads. I suppose the last time that we would have probably interacted in any great way with Kieran was on that day back in Dunbeg for the ladies finals. And one thing that struck me was that even though he was obviously going through his illness, he came, he presented every cup. I think that's something that someone said to me this morning, no matter what it was, whether it was an under-12 Spring League or the Senior Championship, Kieran wanted to be there to present it. And it was a particular lovely moment when he was given the Senior Cup to Ellie O'Gorman, because he would have coached Ellie underage, and there was just a real sense of pride in him handing it over to her, and you could see that he enjoyed that, and he just had that way with people. I don't think anybody would ever have a bad word to say about Kieran Harvey ever. And he had four daughters, and he was just really well able to deal with kind of people of all ages. I mean, sometimes people get to the stage where they mightn't be quite as in touch maybe with younger generations, but he was, because he had four daughters, so I suppose he'd no choice. But he was just a great man to deal with, and you'd always come away from an interaction with Kieran, whether for us it might be work or if it was ladies football related or whatever, you'd always come away the better for it. So all we can do is pass on our deepest condolences. He's a massive loss, and as I said, it's the family that'll feel it most. Absolutely.
As you mentioned, condolences to Mary and the girls and the extended family, and we know that Kieran's funeral taking place tomorrow evening in Caherlohan, and the funeral mass in on Thursday, so our thoughts with them at this time. If we can move on, I guess, to on-field action, Fergie, this weekend dominated, I suppose, locally by the Similebridge Ballygunner game, but I mean, the result, comprehensive performance, disappointing. Do we see it coming? I mean, Similebridge, comprehensive and very consistent in the Clare Championship, and then to go out and I suppose bow out in the way that they did would probably be the most disappointing factor, will it?
Yeah, I think so. And I suppose factoring in as well, been below on Similebridge in their own patch as such, that it's more alarming really that how easily they were turned over. 9 points down at half time, I think the game was kind of done and dusted. Even in the, being 9 points down, it was really the performance of Ballygunner from the start to the finish that was unique about it. Similebridge were very disappointed. They never showed that real energy and real appetite that we saw in the Clare Championship. I suppose it does question a little bit. I suppose it'd be naive not to question, the standard again maybe of the Clare Championship. And we have been very competitive. When you look at Waterford teams in general, you look at Ballyea below in Walsh Park, they went to extra time with Ballygunner and unlucky not to come out on the right side of it. And we've generally been very competitive with Waterford teams, whether at home or away. But it was very disappointing. And, I was going back on it on the Monday, and a lot of the points that we had raised previous to the county final that we thought the Bridge could have been maybe exploited a little bit on it. Ballygunner absolutely took some of their defenders to shreds.
Full backline
in particular. And we kind of touched on that in our little bit of knowledge on what we knew about the Bridge. Obviously Caherlohan weren't listening to us too much, and when we kind of did really point where we felt Caherlohan could have hurt, but Ballygunner.
They must be big in Ballygunner, so are we?
I don't know. I don't know whether they listen to our podcast or saw our podcast, but I can tell you they really, really exploited what we felt was the weaknesses in the Bridge team and absolutely pulverising. But the most disappointing thing I think from the Bridge was their lack of energy and their lack of appetite for it. The game, with 15 minutes to go, it was a case of let's get this over and done and get out of here as fast and as quick as we can. And that'll be very disappointing for them players. And I suppose, because look at Munster Championship in its own right is unique. It's a real bonus territory. I always put it down to everybody wants to win the county championships in their counties, and it really gives a big lift to their club and the parish and the community. Now you go into the Munster club, and it's real bonus territory to make a real statement. And I'm afraid, it might have taken we can never take the Caherlohan back this year from Similebridge, but it might have taken a little bit of glass off their championship win in club championship win in Clare. And I'm sure there'll be many eyebrows, and there'll be, because we have spoken at length on this, on the management factor in Similebridge, and Davy and Paddy Meehan and Tim Crowe and co, that how driven they are and how prepared they are. But they were, the whole thing was found out on Sunday, and they'll be very disappointed, not with the getting beat, with their performance. It was way below par for their standards. Yeah,
and just picking up on that point, Peter, of the bonus territory thing, we were just speaking off here, like Ballygunner 6 in a row this year, I think, was it? Yes. Whereas, the Bridge 3 and 5, and that in itself is an important step. But would Ballygunner be more seeing it as progression more so than bonus territory, where the Bridge might be in that bonus territory mind frame? Could that have played into it?
I don't think so, because one of the first things that some of the Bridge players were talking about after beating Caherlohan was, they were saying, okay, we'll enjoy this for a few days, but they were definitely talking about Munster and feeling that they hadn't performed to the level that they could have previously in Munster. They've had a few bad. This generation of Bridge players have had a few bad beatings in Munster. Like, they have a great record in Clare. I think for Ballygunner, they probably just looked a couple of steps ahead. They looked very professional in everything they did. Everything they did. And
I was even talking to somebody after it, and their meal afterwards. All tugged out, and I know it's a small thing. You might say, how petty is that? But the professionalism you talked about, Peter, all dressed in their Ballygunner blazers and shirts, and at their meal, not a drink to be seen on the table in Dromore, and then on their bus and home. Very professional, very well organised, and that reflected on the field.
Like, I suppose you look at, this, to win a championship, there's loads of people, involved in GA in Clare across the country that would love one senior championship medal. And, some of these Bridge players, we can't take it away from them, have multiple championship medals. So, they're obviously a very, very good team in Clare, but they haven't made that transition from Clare to Munster. And I suppose, you know, a lot of Clare teams have in the past. Like, there's now a good tradition in Clare, going back to the mid-90s, of teams winning the championship but gone on then to make a real, and you know, Similebridge obviously have won All Ireland Club, won it back in '96, so they have that tradition themselves. They've won other Munster Club championships as well. But this group have yet to, I suppose, get to that level, and that's just the one thing that they've got to do to be remembered as you know, they're a good team, to borrow a quote from Eamon Dunphy, but probably not a great team.
Yeah.
In terms of even their own club, or is that a bit?
No, I think it's a fair statement, and again, facts will show you that it's a fair statement. You know, and I go back to the Ballygunner team that were playing. A lot of people had, you know, when they beat Ballyea and they were meeting the Pearshig, people were writing off either Ballyea or Ballygunner playing the Pearshig as if it was a set in stone game for the Pearshig to win. And Ballygunner went to the Gaelic Grounds, I think, and actually beat them in a Munster Club final, which to me proved the real quality of them. And it backs up the point you are just after making, Peter, is that, you know, you can win your club championship, but to back it up in the Ballygunner sense, because bonus territory for them is kind of gone now, because they've a lot of championships put in club, but to really back up the quality of their team would be to go and win a Munster Club and go on and contest in All Ireland, and they've done that. And I think this year they looked really, really, really focused, and there could be one set in mind, and that could be All Ireland Club final day.
Yeah, because obviously a big talking point as well, Fergie, coming out of the game is something that happened after the match. When the Bridge retired to the dressing room and sat down and took stock, one man, we're told, took to the floor, and not for the first time owned the room, but probably for the last time in terms of Bridge dressing room, talking obviously about Niall Gilligan announcing his retirement. He had indicated after the county final that it might be his last Clare Senior Championship, and he copper-fessing that then on Sunday. Not in the circumstances he would have wanted to, obviously, with defeat in O'Garney Park, but calling time on a career that's probably likely never to be matched. Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. There'll be a lot of clubs in Clare delighted that he hung up his boots, because there's no doubt about it. You know, Gilly, he playing for the Bridge, you know, absolutely, you know, was a real threat. Great forward, and yeah, it's a new era for the Bridge with him not being there, because even not starting him, but having him in the dressing room and bringing him on with 10 or 15 minutes to go, you felt you always had a trump card. You felt you always had something that had, you know, you're in a little bit of trouble in a game, not alone the opposing team, but your own team would get a massive lift from a quality player, really experienced player coming on. Yeah, so it's a new area. Look at, he owes nothing to Similebridge, but I'm sure he'll be seen on many a sideline. He might play a little bit of intermediate, I'd say, maybe, because he was on that panel, I think, this year for a while. But he won't be gone. I'm sure he's going to be turning many clubs side in the sideline, and he'll be engaging in many things below on Similebridge. But as you know, you're right, Derek. They'll find it very hard to replace Niall Gilligan below on Similebridge. Yeah, I suppose, Peter, Gilly's maybe a hark back to another era of hurling where it was more character driven. I mean, you know, those great teams of the late 90s and into the early 90s, like, there's some fantastic stories, none of them for safe publication anyway. But I mean, outside of hurling, outside of everything else, Gilly was a character that just kind of attracted people to him, wasn't he?
That's it. He was a great hurler, great clubman, great county man, but a great character as well, you know. And I think kind of encapsulated all that's best about the J. You know, he knew how to hurl. He was a top class hurler on the field, but you know, he was able to enjoy himself off the field as well when the game was over, and kind of fella that you know would be at home in any company. You know, it didn't just have to be below on the Bridge. Fergie, like he'd get on no matter where he went.
That's for sure. Many a Monday in Nevins in Clarecastle, the first to arrive when we were at the top table at Club Senior Hurling in Clare. Maybe the first to arrive with a crew would have been Gilly, and sure, look at the crack would be absolutely mighty. He'd set the tone, and he has his
Transit Fan. I
was going to say the famous song would come out, and I'll never forget one story where we were after winning a county final. Don't ask me what year, but Gilly came with the crew, and we were going well at the time. I mean, of a Monday, and he was asked to sing the Transit Van, and he closed the eyes and he had the first 2 or 3 lines, and at the same time the whole bar was evacuated out into the lounge, and when he opened his eyes for the second verse he realised we were all gone to the lounge. There was no one listening to him, but he carried on with the song and he sang it, and and that was the character in him, and it didn't faze him either that we were all gone to the lounge, but we all came back in and he finished off the song. But he was that kind of a fella, not alone brilliant hurler on the field, but he carried a great aura too when it came out on to meeting people and engaging with people, didn't matter where it had to be, and that's important too. I think we can look too much into the body of what the man did on the hurling field too, but you have to have that character outside of that too, that gets you on well in life, and he had that. He had that Gilly, and he'd be sorely missed in the bridge, I can tell you. But as I said, I'm sure he's going to engage in management somewhere along the line fairly fast and quick, and he'll add his stamp to every team, especially in the forwards.
I'll never forget as well his first appearance for Clare, 97 All-Ireland final. Hadn't played for the bridge at that stage at adult level, and I think he was on Paul Shelley, wasn't he?
Yes, right, yeah.
Paul Shelley was cornerback, and he was a fair bull of a cornerback now. But Gilly, I think he scored 2 points in play, and he just showed that day that he had the not just the ability but the temperament. And he didn't. He played an All-Ireland final, didn't faze him.
Yeah, there was the famous team picture.
The team picture, the 16, the picture, and it didn't. And you're right that he in his early career, even at intercounty level, not alone at club level with the bridge, the big day didn't faze him. The big challenge, an experience. You mentioned the Paul Shelley, which was a savage cornerback at the time, and not alone well left, but he was a physical man, and a young fella going in on top of him. But didn't faze Gilly. He used his real head, and we saw that all during his career, that he was very smart on the hurling field, and as I said, I'm sure he's going to add that to many Similebridge teams coming up along.
Yeah, maybe even Clare teams as well, because we're going to take a quick pause. Talking to Gilly, one of his former teammates, of course, made Clare senior hurling manager last week. That, among other talking points out of October's County Board meeting. We'll talk about them just next. Now, welcome back to this week's edition of the Clare Champion Sports Chat podcast. On the field, we've spoken about Similebridge and Ballygunner at the weekend. We'll talk a little bit of football as well before we finish up. But Fergie, I suppose finally we've been looking for it and talking about it and wondering would it ever come. And last Thursday night, confirmation that Brian Lohan is the new Clare senior hurling manager, a 2-year term with a review at the end of year 2, with the possibility of a third on top of it. Ken Ralph, a good Clare Castleman, and James Moran as his selectors. We don't have a coach yet. There's word of who might be in as an S&C coach. It's obviously quite late for those appointments, but first of all, I guess, business done, Brian in place, that has to be a positive.
Yeah, 100%. Everybody's delighted now that we've Brian Lohan in place, and I suppose now it's down to business. It's everybody's kind of looking forward now to seeing his backroom team in full, I suppose, and seeing the boys getting started. I do know that quite a few of the intercounty lads themselves have been working in a bit of strength and conditioning program themselves while all the messy stuff was going on, which is again a good sign of leadership. I know there's a few that hasn't, and they're quite anxious if they're going to be involved in the panel, that they want to get started, because it is a real important point. The strength and conditioning now at all levels, at club level and more so at intercounty level, is probably the real key now, especially at this time of the year. And we've seen the teams that have been really up at the top and at the business ends, lads that have real strength and conditioning at the highest level. So we might be a little bit behind in that, and it was a real opportunity, as we've spoken about, to really make fast headway on that, especially with the season we had last year. But that's not to be. But now I hope Brian can get his team as quick as possible in place and get down to business. I'm a little bit disappointed again, and I mentioned that I thought the process wasn't going to make any difference to the personnel going for the job. It's disappointing that where we do have Brian Owen, a great man, and I think he's going to bring real fire to the team. He's going to bring real energy to this thing. Having said, look, the book was opened up for other people to put their name into the hat and go for an interview. And I kind of said it here in one of our podcasts, that I don't think anything will change from what we've seen in front of us. I'm disappointed that the highest job, the biggest job in Clare, that there isn't more lads biting at the bit, really raring to have a go at it.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think that what has happened in the process, like, would you put yourself in a position to firstly, and we said it, I think an independent body should have been appointed straight away. Once the county board weren't capable of getting this thing sorted out, a complete independent board should have been put in place. I don't think there would have been too many interested in sitting in front of a committee drawn up of a Monday night at a county board meeting after what happened and sitting down and discussing the thing. I don't think there was any interviews held. Either Brian Lohan and Louis McQueen pulled shop. So there wasn't any interviews held. So the process really didn't take place, did it? Really, as such. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm just delighted this is over and done with. I'm delighted it's sorted. It has been a shambles. There's no doubt about that. But it's just a pity that in most walks of life, when you have competition for anything, you normally get the best, don't you? You normally get the best process then, and we don't have that. You asked me a question in our last podcast, with the process that happened at the county board meeting, going forward. I hope from here on in that we never see what has happened again for 4 months, that there is a really determined group of people now that are going to say that we have a process in place going forward for the next few years that will determine the future of managers, management teams, budgets, everything like that. So it's so important to Clare hurling, because after it all, I'm so driven by making sure and hoping that Clare hurling succeeds, that the likes of that stuff can never happen again. It can never happen again. And if it does, there should be absolute war over it. And let's hope now that a new process. I'm really looking forward to this review that we haven't seen yet, and I'm sure there should be a lot about the process that was wrong and where it's going to be corrected and who's going to correct it going forward. I don't know when is that due, or was it
at the board meeting, just to clarify that Chairman Joe Cooney did say that the review will be with clubs in the next couple of weeks. So.
All right, so it's going to which is a good idea.
I think the idea is to have it before the AGM and the clubs discuss, go through it then if they want. So.
Yeah, which is a good idea. So clubs will actually have time to look at it. Clubs will have time to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and maybe go back at the AGM and discuss matters and maybe add to it, which would be an important thing here. Add to it where they feel that what has happened should never happen again. And going forward for everybody, for county boards, for supporters, for players, for management teams going forward, this will be a very much welcome. And to make our podcast very short and very sweet most Mondays. So
we don't want that though, Fergie.
There'll be other. It's not about being a podcast here to criticise anybody. We're open to absolutely, and we've done it, given great credit where credit is due, and that should be the process. Criticise when it needs to be. Give your opinion, put your name to it, and let a person come in and have it out with you face to face, and give their opinion on it, and park it up. Then that's the idea of these, and that's the idea of why I think that county boards throughout the country, and we've seen in Galway, we've seen in Mayo now, and we saw it in Cork for years, we saw it in Limerick where there was player strikes, and it was down to bad management at county board levels that was allowed to erode into confusion, into absolute mayhem, and should never happen. So people need to voice their opinions. It should never need to get personal, but people need to voice their opinions, put their names to it, and those that say you're wrong, Fergie O'Loughlin, you're wrong, Derek Lynch, come and have it out. Come and have that argument.
Does anyone say he's wrong, no?
Yeah, well, look, Peter can never be wrong when he's the other, because he'll blame you for it, Derek. But that's the process should be. And people need to remember here, Derek, all this, is that I know from definitely the three of us sitting down here, and many of our guests that have come in here, we only one interest, and that's the Clare GA. The Clare GA succeed. And people need to know that as long as we're in these forums, that we will be questioning things that we feel is not right, and complimenting and being very much backing up when things go right. That's often important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter, let's move on to another news story, I guess, that came out of the meeting, and that was when the Treasurer of TRGA, Michael Gallagher, had been asked previously by Clonmely's Niall Romer about the cost surrounding Caherlohan and the Centre of Excellence, and a figure of 4.8 million was mentioned by him for that. It seems extravagant. It seems certainly on the high end of extravagance, given that, in particular, what has been pointed out is you go to UL on a December, January, February night. Chances are, as Dalo pointed out in his Irish Examiner column there a couple of weeks ago, 8, 9, 10 o'clock you'll be seeing Clare hurlers, Clare footballers hanging around under the lights. With a Centre of Excellence in Caherlohan that's after cost of 4.8 million, with reports that the two supporters clubs of the senior hurlers and senior footballers put money towards their own dressing rooms, towards the gym facilities, towards the analysis room that's there, the kind of cinema sloped room that's there. And then for the county board to admit that no maintenance had been carried out in these fields since it was opened, I think in 2015 was it out there in Tulla. So, like, that's a figure that needs further scrutiny. I mean, we'll take it at face value. If Michael Gallagher says it's 4.8 million, then it's 4.8 million. But
does that include buying the actual?
I presume it does. What he said was that
2.2 something million bought it, if I can recollect. So you're talking about probably 2 point something million invested in the actual facility, as you've spoken about, dressing rooms, analysis area. So you're talking about 2.2 million invested in the thing. And what do we see for it?
Like, I think nobody in Clare GA would have any issue at all with even 4.8 million if the facility was open all year round or accessible all year round. Because, as you were mentioning there about strength and conditioning and that, like, I mean, playing at intercounty level now is all but a year-round occupation, nearly. Yeah. I know it's a sport, but occupation is nearly the word for it more than sport. If you're going to be
certainly a vocation,
serious about it, and look, I think the whole idea of Caherlohan is magnificent. Like, it's great. It's a great concept to have a centre of excellence where ideally every element of preparing an intercounty team should be catered for, from doing the strength and conditioning work, the on-field work, meeting rooms, analysis, all the eating, dietary requirements, everything that, and there's probably other stuff that I haven't thought of, but all those things, if you did have a place where you kind of were certain, right, every Clare county team can go there and avail of it. And I remember as well, this is going back like about, 2019, this is going back about 10 years, if not longer. I specifically remember at the time, the Caherlohan project was mooted, like it being categorically said that ladies football and camogie would be catered for out in Caherlohan too. That hasn't happened. So this was going back to the figure. I wouldn't have any problem with the figure if the facility itself was what it should be. I don't think it is. The figure, I think, it does cost money to construct something that's I know very high quality, but it's not open year round and it's not accessible.
Yeah.
So
4.8 million is the Caherlohan cost, but like then you're adding in the LIT cost, the UL cost, the Lees Road cost. County teams going to train on club grounds that have to turn their lights of a Tuesday, Wednesday night and get the generator going. Like, that's all a cost as well. Like, why couldn't it be all encapsulated? And the first thing, surely to God, the first thing that should have gone in there was an AstroTurf floodlit. Wouldn't that solve everything?
100%.
100%. No, Joe Cooney did say, to be fair, in the night that there will be more development coming, and I know I spoke to him before the convention, I think 2 years ago, where the AstroTurf was mentioned, but there's been no progress on it. Like, surely that has to be priority number one.
Yeah, you should have a couple. You should have not just one. You should have 2 or 3 AstroTurf pitches. Because we know the weather in this country is not great during the winter, and how else are you going to play hurling, play football, other than on an AstroTurf during the worst months of the year, at least.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, really, when you do actually go deep into what's out there. The first thing, as we mentioned, should have been an all-weather facility, to play in. We don't get the weather here to have sand-based pitches, maybe, and they need awful maintenance all year round. And the problem you have during the summer with sand-based pitches, then, if you don't have a sprinkler system, you break your legs in them. But all-weather facilitates your all-year-round facilities. your strength and conditioning is so much important. Your in-house catering you mentioned, where you have your in-house catering. Again, you're cutting the cost now. You're actually getting an in-house catering, which I presume would be cheaper than going out eating out in hotels or different things like that. But it wasn't. I don't think this was really thought out of very, very well. Can it be corrected? I think it can be. At a cost, maybe at a cost again, but maybe a cost that needs to be swallowed with a big lump. Okay, it needs to be done.
But if you cut out, as I mentioned, the UL costs and that, well, then it probably balances out long term.
Yeah, long term in years ahead. But I've often said this. Geographically, I think it's wrong where it is. You think, for example, if it is to be an overall facility for Clare GA, it's an awful long trip for a Doonbeg footballer to come from Doonbeg out to Caherlohan. I would see it. I would see it, based around Innis, there was a.
I suppose land would be a problem, would it?
Well, there was land available. I remember there was land available. What we called the old bull station, out to Kildysor Road there.
He wants it in Clare.
Well, to be.
Now it's going on.
Well, maybe. No, but I just think geographically that would be right bang in the middle for. Now, look, don't get me wrong. It's only an extra few miles out to Caherlohan and that, but I just think, based in a facility where that I remember that old bull station was available. There was land for sale there at the time, very good land, and everything is very good in Clarecastle,
Is this an advertisement for Clarecastle community development or something?
But it would have been genuinely. I would have thought at the time, and the land was for sale at the time there. It would have been geographically really, really the place to build your centre of excellence. It wasn't to be, but. Again, just go back to facilities and what we have in Caherlohan. Like, it really needs a real modern look now, doesn't it? It's hard to believe that we're a few years old and we really need to say we need to go back and remodel the whole situation out there. But we need to do, especially the playing surface areas, right? And then you need to manage the thing where I think that every county player has a fob. We mentioned about strength and conditioning and all year round event, that he can fob a gate going in. He can get into his gym area with a fob in, and he can do his strength and conditioning, because it is a facility that should be used for all inter-county players, and it needs to be managed that way. And I think that's an awful important thing that it's accessible to every inter-county player, because otherwise if it becomes a time zone, it won't be used properly. I think.
Like, is Caherlohan part of the DNA of Clare GA at the moment?
No,
I don't think it is.
It's not.
It's
not.
But just something that's very basic, right? And just when we spoke to Fergal Lynch in terms of his experience with the minors, and I suppose it's important to mention as well, obviously we have a new minor manager in Brian Coffey, and more details of his team are to be confirmed. There was nothing said on the night. Sean Dial in his under 20. But I remember Fergal saying that you have a situation where a parent would have to drive, a 15, 16-year-old, as they are now at minor level, under 17s, to training. Sit there maybe on a bad night, stick on the radio, or maybe stick ourselves on there in the podcast if he wants to save it for that, and then drive home again. Whereas, like, if you had Caherlohan and a very, very simple thing of a little shop. I mean, what club doesn't have a little shop now with buy a cup of coffee, buy the paper, buy whatever you want, and just passes the time, and probably gets parents more involved in seeing it as a facility that looks after me and my young fella.
A little cafe, a little canteen area. All these things now are modern things that every county has. They're really thought out now, and look, at maybe it's not too late if money can be got somewhere to really make it the name it has, Centre of Excellence, but it's not at the moment, I'm afraid. And I think they know that within the county board, and they really need now, I think, to get a group of people around that and really get to work on that and make it a Centre of Excellence. Because it is so important. It is so important. We have, you mentioned the Fergal Lynch thing, where they have to travel around and down on big borrowed knee from club to club asking for facilities, and only for the goodness of clubs out there. A lot of our county teams wouldn't be prepared. And just in the Fergal Lynch thing, I feel awful sorry for Fergal Lynch this time. Fergal, I thought, did a reasonably good job last year. And the best of luck to Barry Coffey coming in. I don't know the man, but I wish him the very, very best of luck. But I just feel very, very sorry for Fergal Lynch that he had opted out. He had got a phone call to put his name back in. He was promised he'd get what he was looking for, which, by the way, was a small bit of a budget, to prepare the team properly, to pay for the expenses of those that are going to give their valuable time, and that was seen to be a little too much, which again, go back to the senior thing for a second, and I'm going to have to track a little bit. Do you know, the one thing in an interview that if Brian Lohan had done an interview, I'm sure the one thing in the highest form of the agenda, apart from the backroom team, would be, what's your budget for the year? Do you know, what are you looking for? Because unless county boards know now what, and Fergal Lynch fell down on the sword because of his budget. And I saw the budget. It was absolutely ridiculous. You know, small thing to get teams prepared to be up there, to compete with the best counties. You know, you have to have financial backing. And I'm afraid he was led down the garden path a little bit in this. And it's not my first time saying it. He's given a lot to Clare hurling. I think he's a very good coach. I think he's very well organised. And I just feel that he was badly treated, treated on this one. And if it did, which I'm led to believe it came down to budget and it came down to money. I'm sorry, but we're going over in Clare.
Well, I suppose just to finish up on that point, Michael Caherlohan did tell the meeting that we're finishing with a small surplus this year, so if that's any consolation.
Yeah.
Well, time is just after beatings. We were going to talk football, but I'll tell you what, we'll save that for next week, because depending on how a certain match goes in Clare tonight, we either will or won't be discussing under 21 football next week. I mightn't be coming to work tomorrow, or Peter might be off. We'll wait and see how things go. Thanks to the lads for coming in, Sean on camera. And just before we let you go, get the paper on Thursday. Loads of previews, particularly of Scarf for Gunlows Munster Club Camogie final. They're down in Cappamore on Saturday. We'll be there as well. We'll be live streaming that game. Check out our Facebook page, as you have been right across the year. Live commentary to come on Saturday afternoon. More details in the paper on Thursday. I will see you again next Monday.